Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma,
And I'm MC.
and we are your hosts of the G Forces podcast. So, this past weekend was the Mexican Grand Prix, and it was a pretty wild one.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of safety and crashes, this was
The most interesting one that we've had in a long time, I'd say.
yeah, I also feel like it was probably the like nothing's happened the last few weeks. Like everything's been
it's been
really
very
clean.
tame, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, and I don't think it is. I just think yeah, this weekend brought a level of carnage for some players that really blows.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So definitely exciting on that front, if that's your ish, if that's what you like.
I mean, I do like a good crash as long as everybody's safe,
Yeah.
to be honest. Which might be a controversial thing to say, that I like a good crash.
I think,
It makes it interesting because then it's unpredictable what's going to happen.
I think you have to say you like a good crash when everyone's safe and sound.
Yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
don't want mass destruction.
Absolutely not. I want
Yeah.
everybody to be completely safe and fine, but it
Like,
adds a little
I
spice.
think like for me, I don't want a crash necessarily. I more just want like a puncture.
Yeah.
Like something like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't want something like bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. Glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay. We might kind of turn things around a little bit this episode. We were thinking about, rather than doing like walking through each step of the actual race, maybe talking about some highlights instead, just to kind of change things up a little bit.
Kind of like picking instead of going through our notes, kind of picking an important moment that happened each time and just kind of like discussing if it was discussed, if we've seen anyone talk about it, our thoughts, just kind of make it more of a conversation and less of like a teaching, because I feel like we can read through our notes in our other episodes where we're doing like research and really trying to tell you guys a story, whereas for this I think it's like everyone's watched the race.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I realized that last week when we were talking about Coda, we didn't do the track info.
Oh, whoops.
At least I don't think we did. Off the top of my head, I don't think we did. So we're gonna make sure we get into that track info this time for Mexico. So we're gonna get into that right now. MC, where are we?
We are in Mexico. Honestly, I think that this is, in terms of fans, I know we say this about like 6 other races, but I will say I think being close to Dia de los Muertos, like I think there was just so much passion for Mexico, and it was so exciting. Like, you saw so much like care for like what?
Did you see that Nico Hulkenberg after the race? This is completely off
Got
topic.
tacos.
He got he got a box of tacos and was eating it in his post-race interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was just so much like love for Mexico. Like, there was just so much excitement, and just something I wanted to comment on. But yeah, so the official race name for this weekend was the Formula 1 Grand Premio de la Ciudad de Mexico 2024. Yes, I know Grandma's rolling in her grave on those pronunciations.
I said the same thing last year.
The track name is the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Last year we did a episode on one of the Rodriguez brothers. They're pretty prolific in terms of like F1 in the country.
Yeah.
So definitely a really good listen if you haven't. The first F1 Grand Prix was hosted in 1963, and the circuit length is 4.304 kilometers or 2.67 miles. The number of laps is 71 laps, so a little bit higher than we've been seeing. The race distance was 305.354 kilometers or 189.73 miles. The lap record was placed in 2021 by Valtteri Bottas in a Mercedes, and he did the lap in a minute and 17.774 seconds. There are 17 turns, and then there are 3 DRS zones. So DRS detection zone 1 is between turns 9 and 10, and activation begins after turn 11. And then DRS detection zone 2 is between turns 14 and 15. Activation begins after turn 17 up until turn 1, and then an additional activation between turn 3 up until turn 4. So 2 DRS detection zones, but 3 overall zones on this track. This track is a little different. It's basically in like a sports complex. So there's a baseball diamond, not running through the track like I thought. But like in the middle of the track, then there's the stadium, which they've used for like
Concerts.
concerts. Like I don't know if
I'm
they've
pretty sure
done
that's where Taylor
sport.
Swift played when she went to Mexico on the Eras
Yeah, I
tour.
don't know if they've done like sport exhibitions there, but it's like all used. So there's a tunnel and the drivers get to drive through this stadium, and it's just a really unique, I feel like, venue.
Yeah.
I really like it. Like I said, I think that there's such a like passion for the country, the history that they have for F1. You know, it's not extensively like crazy the way like British F1 history
Yeah.
is, but I think there's just like a lot of pride for the bit that they have.
Yeah.
Um
Agreed.
so yeah, overall Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to go into practice because it was just a regular race weekend, no sprints.
Thank
Thank
God.
God.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, this isn't like super big news, but just kind of standard. Mexico, I think typically is the weekend that you'll see like a lot of rookies, like a lot of teams will use
Yeah,
Mexico
last year it
FP.
was.
Yeah, so this year again it was. So if you were watching Free Practice 1, there was a few drivers that weren't in the race. So Kimi
Well,
Antonelli,
in practice.
yeah, but they weren't in the race. So they were that's
I thought you were meaning there were a few drivers that weren't in the race in general, like
never
regular.
mind.
Yeah,
Just
I thought you were meaning the rookies who drove in the race. I'm like,
no.
that's not how that works.
So Kimi Antonelli was in a Mercedes, Ollie Behrman was in a Ferrari, Pato O'Ward was in a McLaren, much to the chagrin, no, not chagrin, much to the excitement of Mexico, um, being another, driver.
Mexican driver.
Felipe Drogovic was in an Aston Martin, and then Robert Schwartzman was in a Sauber. So,
Which
quite
I found
a
interesting because he's a Ferrari. He was, I don't know if he still is anymore, but a Ferrari Academy driver.
well. I can't remember who the last driver Sauber put in, like the last rookie they put into the
I
car
think it was Theo
was.
Porcher.
Yeah, but I mean they're still undecided
Yeah.
on their seat, so I feel like
At this rate, I think it'll be Franco, to be honest.
I don't know.
Who knows? Nobody knows anything about anything.
Well, and I think that this just kind of goes to show, like no offense to Robert Schwartzman, but like,
It's been a few years since he raced.
well, and I also don't really see him as like a top contender from
No,
this for the
no.
seat when there are people like Franco who is like openly admitted in the post race show, like, I don't currently have a seat. Like I
Yeah.
will be in a different league. So definitely interesting. And then yeah, I feel like the Ollie Behrman, Kimi Antonelli, like everything else is just kind of kosher.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention about Free Practice 1 was the first layer of carnage to happen this weekend was Alex Albon during Free Practice 1 lost control of his car and unfortunately made contact with Ollie Behrman when Ollie was in, I think it was Charles's Ferrari? I can't remember.
I think
Um
so.
to be transparent, Ollie did not cause this crash. I-
Alex had just kind of lost control of the rear of the car, and then the car just kind of spun out, and Ollie was just kind of in
he
the
was like
way.
wrong place, wrong time, and
Yeah.
he wasn't in the way. Like he literally wasn't. Like he was yielding in a way that he was properly supposed to. It was just Alex lost control. So
Which, something that we need to talk about that we both said. We are scared for Alex's seat next year. Not next year. I don't think that they will drop him next year. But for 2026, I don't know if he'll be re signed because he has not performed the way that he has in the past this year. I think it's been a hard year for Williams in general. But with Franco coming in and performing so well, I am fearful that they're gonna prioritize Carlos and Franco over him.
I think we had to see. Like I think it has literally been an insane year.
Yeah,
I
but like
think
we're not the only ones who are saying this.
but yeah, no, I
For a while, I thought that Alex's seat was like one of the most secure seats on the grid, but I just don't think so anymore
yeah,
because of Franco.
I think that there has been I think that there are like certain I feel like there are certain drivers that unfortunately kind of get like I feel like Alex Albon is kind of going to be like Valtteri Bottas where
Yeah,
it's like there's always someone that they're in the shadow of, and like
yeah,
Alex hasn't been in the shadow of anyone right now, but yeah, I do fear that it's going to become the Carlos show, and all of a sudden it's going to be like Alex is pushed to the wayside, or and I really hope it doesn't become like a Checo situation where it's like
yeah,
almost like visibly clear there's no support. But yeah, I think I did see someone else, and I can't remember if it was like a TikTok or a pundit, um, but someone kind of mentioned that this is also the first time in a really long time that like Alex has had pressure from a teammate.
yeah.
Like Alex has been the better performer for a while with
For
Logan,
years,
and
and
so
then before him, Nicholas Latifi.
I think it's probably has him a little like shaken, like oh
Well, it wasn't
god.
expected. I don't think
Yeah,
any
and
of
I
us
don't think
expected this
and
performance.
no, everyone a few races ago when Franco was
Yeah, we
signed,
were all like, "What are you
everyone was
doing?"
like, who is this person? Why are you doing this? There are other people that are better options. And so, yeah, I just think maybe like it's a little bit of rattled, like, but
Yeah,
I agree. I am nervous, but I also think we've like we've seen this season, unfortunately it's just like the name of the game. Like
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
fast moving sport.
yeah. Okay, what else do you have for practice?
That's all I have for FP1. Are we just doing practices like one giant segment
Yeah, yeah,
today?
yeah.
Okay. So then
Carry on as normal.
FP2. For those that did not know, the session was not the typical 60 minutes and was
It was an
instead
hour
it
and a half.
was extended to 90 minutes because Pirelli was testing a prototype tire for 2025, which I feel like they did this as well. Um, I can't I feel like they did this last year as well.
I don't know.
I don't know. Obviously Alex wasn't on track because the session, earlier. And then the big thing I wanted to discuss with you was the additional crash.
The additional crash. Who was it again?
George Russell, about 10 minutes into the session, crashed into the barriers pretty hard. And I
Yes,
really
wasn't it like very similar to Alex's?
I thought it was, and I should have written down what turns Alex
Different
crashed
turns.
on and what, but it almost feels similar where they just kind of lost grip.
Yeah.
And I think something that we saw in quali the following day was the track evolution. I think the track was really dirty. It seemed really like it just
I don't know if they had a
support
support
series.
series this weekend.
I don't know. I'm also curious too to see how often the track when it's not F1, how often the track is used
It's
for
not.
racing.
It's not.
Yeah, so I mean you have to think they had to build up on that grip.
That's
So
true. Yeah.
I'm sure it was just slippery at the
Yeah.
end of the day. But yeah, so George crashed, and then the practice session resumed with 54 minutes remaining. Nothing else pretty much happened in FP2, and then in FP3, um, just a few announcements were made about some of the teams and things that they had to do. So apparently Mercedes had broken curfew because they were working on George's car. So I don't know if a penalty was received, but that note was mentioned. And then Alex Albon had to fit a new power unit to his car following his crash as well, but apparently he hadn't like exceeded his limit, like it was like in his like he was allowed to take it. And then Max had been struggling with his car in both the prior sessions. So they reviewed his car and determined it was an issue tied to his air intake. So they fit an older power unit onto the vehicle.
Okay.
So it just seemed like there was like a lot of changes
It's the time of
after.
year.
It's that time of year. I think people are just kind of like, I think the bucket of money is getting
A little
a
dry.
little dry. I'm sorry to. I'm
They
even
don't have
surprised
hundreds
I
of
can say
millions of
that.
dollars.
I also think people
My
are
bucket
like.
of money is dry.
I think we're just like. I don't want to say we're at like a duct tape stage, but I feel like they're
Yeah,
just
no,
like
we kind of
we
are
really
though.
are. Like they're just
Piece things
piecing.
together.
Yeah, they're just piecing the cars together. Unfortunately, that's not where like all the carnage ends. There'll be more in quali and the race.
Yeah.
But that's really it for practice. I feel like um it was exciting in the sense of like unfortunately people slipped and went into barriers, but besides that it was pretty standard.
Pretty typical.
Especially with the tire testing. Because they really have
It's an even softer tire than what we have right now, so it's a C6, and they're potentially going to introduce it to next year.
Well, they were
And it's the
also
softest possible tire that
I'm
they have.
pretty sure they were doing C6, C5 and C4 testing. And they were given a race plan by Pirelli.
Yeah.
So like they don't
Everybody
just
had
like
to do the same thing,
yeah.
basically.
So they don't just like go out and like do their normal with the tires. They like they're trying to pull data for
Yeah.
Pirelli. So that's the other thing is that like with certain sessions like that it really becomes like just the pundits chit-chatting.
Yeah. Literally FP2 was the pundit chit-chatting.
Yeah, especially when there's like a red flag.
Yeah.
They just like they're like let's search the crowd.
They showed us the video of Hinch doing a dance with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
That I mean,
apparently Hinch won Dancing with the Stars. Didn't know that.
in Canada, I'm assuming.
I don't know.
He's Canadian.
Yeah, but he raced an IndyCar in America.
Oh, true.
So maybe I don't know. I didn't really look it up, to be honest. Yeah. Didn't really care enough.
Well,
Alex Jakes was just like, you would imagine it would be a little bit better coming from someone who's won Dancing with the Stars.
I mean, there's that whole show about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Like, their lives are crazy.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
We don't need to go into that. Okay, we're going to go into quali now.
Quali, I feel like I'm trying to think of the big things that happened. So, Oscar Piastri. Let's talk about that for quali 1.
Yeah, this was his worst quali of the season.
This was
probably one of his worst qualifyings ever, to be honest, in F1.
You know, it was interesting, and this is what I was, just talking about with the track evolution. There was a moment where all of a sudden, like, Hulkenberg ended up second fastest, and there was a bunch of people in the knockout zone that were like that shouldn't have been. So it wasn't just Oscar; it was Oscar, Checo, and Charles were really at threat. And I just he made a mistake.
Yeah.
That's all that really happened. It was one slip up, and it's something.
Well, his time was deleted.
It was fully I couldn't remember.
Yeah, his time was deleted. His really good time was deleted, and then he won again, and he just didn't have like the grip that he had before.
Well, and that's something that I feel like was a little bit of a theme this weekend was the track times.
Yeah.
It did affect several people during quali.
Yeah.
But long story short, because of this, Oscar Piastri ended up not moving past Q1 for the first time, like
in a very long time. He's always moved past Q1 in this season.
Yeah.
But also Checo didn't make it past Q1.
Well, and that's something I kind of wanted to talk about too is I feel like last year Checo had a big crash here, didn't he?
Yeah, off the start.
And I sometimes feel like the hometown races for some of the drivers are like a
Always go
little
poorly.
cursed.
They always go
Yeah,
poorly.
like I feel like George has not really had the best time at Silverstone. I feel like, Checo doesn't have the best, like, I just, Checo has not strongly performed in his
At
home
his home
race.
race.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the pressure of, oh, this is my home race, the whole country's watching me.
Yeah, like almost this need for like,
If there's one race I have to perform well at, it's this one.
yeah. But unfortunately, Oscar and Checo did not move past Q1. So the big names that ended up getting out was Colapinto, not big names, everyone that got out. The 5 people, Jesus. Franco Colapinto, Oscar Piastri, Checo Perez, Esteban Ocon, and Zhou Guanyu.
Franco Colapinto, in a post-quali interview, said that he was really disappointed in his performance. He ends up making up for it in the race, I'd say. He moves up a bit.
Yeah,
But I think this was just his first time that he was out, like, in Q1 without his teammate. Because the last time he was out in Q1, like, Alex was with him as well.
I definitely think that there's a pressure on Franco and Liam
To
to
perform really
like
well.
have this level of like perfection and aggression and just kind of be like I feel like they're trying to embody the perfect driver, and I commend them for what they're trying to do because I feel like every weekend right now is just a job interview and it's probably
Yeah, but
so stressful.
I've seen some people online talk about how every weekend they are basically embodying like Red Bull Sebastian Vettel of like, I am a menace, I need to do well.
Yeah. And it's not even though like Liam and Franco, it's also there are other people like during the race that were being that aggressive.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting how it's no one is happy about it
Yeah.
because we've had pretty decent, I feel like clean fighting. Like we have not had a true menace on the grid in a long time.
K
Like
Mag.
K-Mag, but not to like I feel like the FIA just like try to like
Yeah,
dampen that
because
so fast.
you can't be a menace.
Yeah, you can't. The safety that's needed.
Yeah.
Um so Q2 track limits seem to be a problem as well. Um Charles's first time was deleted. Max was able to put up a good time, and then Lando was eventually able to take the leading spot away from Max. And Alex had a really good
Yeah.
lap. I think he ended up placing up into 5th or like in the top 10. Partially into the qualifying session, Yuki ended up crashing at turn 12.
Yeah.
I don't really remember the crash. I don't know what I was doing during qualifying, but what do you remember what caused it?
No.
I, for the life of me, cannot remember what caused it, but essentially, this ended the session, and unfortunately, there were some people that were hoping to get a final push lap in that just weren't able to. So Yuki obviously was out, Liam Lawson, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, and Valtteri Bottas. But I, for the life of me, cannot remember why he crashed.
No.
Yeah. Sorry about that,
He
guys.
probably lost it in one corner or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But
Wasn't the end of misery for Yuki.
no, and it just gets worse.
It just gets worse for Yuki.
Um, honestly, I don't have much for Q3. After Yuki's crash, it seemed like everyone just kind of had their mission, had their heads down.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Um,
wasn't anything crazy after that.
so Max was affected by track limits. So Max put up the fastest, like the first fastest time, but this was quickly deleted due to track limits. And then Carlos ended up in P1, followed by his teammate. Um, and then eventually Max was able to get a time on. So just a typical clean qualifying session. The top 10 order ended up being Carlos, Max, Lando, Charles, George, Lewis, K-Mag, Pierre, Alex, and Nico. So,
Look at
honestly,
K-Mag out qualifying Nico.
well, and I also like the fact that both Haas's made it into Q1
Yo,
and
Haas is good this year, okay?
like weren't dead last is actually like kind of
I
nice.
love it. I'm here for a good Haas.
Yeah, but that's quality.
Okay, we are going to get into the race now.
Just some quick things before I talk about the first point I want to make. So, Ocon was set to start P19, but he ended up starting from the pit lane because they changed some power unit elements. And then something that was talked about all weekend that we haven't even mentioned is this was Fernando Alonso's 400th race start in his F1 career.
Did you see his helmet?
Yeah.
I loved it. I love it.
It was explain what his helmet was for the
So his
people
helmet was
listening.
just like photos from like 400 not every because he couldn't fit a photo from every single race, but it was from like past races that he's been in of his career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
I think
The longest career of an F1 driver ever.
I think they I really want to say this statistic.
Say
okay,
it.
so and don't quote me, I could be wrong. Apparently, because of the amount of races, and you have to remember, because we talked about this before, the seasons have gotten longer and longer in F1. So, Fernando has been on the latter half of F1. You know, if he was back in the 50s, 60s, it'd be like 7, 8 races, maybe 12. So, apparently, the F1 pundits did the math, and since inception, out of 100% of races in F1, Fernando Alonso has started 37% of the races. Like, that is crazy.
I mean, it makes sense though. Like he started racing in F1 in like the mid to early 2000s. F1 officially started in 1950. So
Yeah.
it's been 20 years of him racing out of 70 something years. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and they've only increased the race like
Yeah,
amounts.
it
So,
makes sense
yeah. But I thought that was kind of, you know, I wish it had done better, ended better, but
for him,
yeah.
yeah.
But
Well, we can't always get what we want.
yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is the start.
Yeah, the start, really the first 10 minutes of the race was just like chaos and carnage, and then it chilled out for a little bit, and then it was like, I don't know, it was like chaos and passing, and like, I don't know.
Well, the other thing to note, and we haven't talked about this yet, is Sunday night we had double booked ourselves. We had bought tickets in Nashville. The U.S. women's national soccer team was doing an exposition game against the Icelandic national team.
Exhibition, not
An
exposition.
Exhibition. That really gave me the like Wonder Kid, Wonderkind.
No,
like,
I'm just exposition.
anxiety.
No,
Like,
just an exhibition or a friendly
but
match against the women's national
Icelandic.
team of Iceland.
Yeah. And so we did not watch the race. Emma, I don't know why you had to look up the results, but all of a sudden you were just like, I'm looking up the results.
Because I had gotten the alert that Carlos, fun fact, Carlos won. I had gotten the alert that Carlos had won, and then I was like, okay, well now I kind of want to see something. And then I started scrolling, and then I see a 25-second pit stop for Max. I see all these things that happen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And MC's like, put your phone away, put it away.
So basically, we knew something was going to have happened, but we didn't know the details.
Yeah.
And we get home from the game, and when I tell you, my jaw.
And I went to
hit
bed.
the
We got
floor.
home from the game. I went straight to bed. I didn't even watch with Mary Catherine.
I could not believe the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because so much happened.
Yeah.
So.
I'm glad it wasn't a morning race, because if it was a morning race at 7 a.m. and that was the first thing I see in the morning, I would have been like, what is going on?
So what happened? Do you want to give the details or do you want me to?
So the start happens and there's some crashes. Do you write down, tell me exactly who crashed, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Yuki crashed.
So right off the start, of course, they focus on the front. So Max was able to get a smidge in front of Carlos for the better start. into turn 1, they were side by
Lando did have
side,
a good start,
and
but he didn't have anywhere to go.
yeah, and basically because of into turn 1 and the way Max was driving on Sunday, Carlos basically had to shoot across the grass. Then behind, while all of this is going on, all of a sudden you see, like, even before the
You
middle of
see
the pack
dust.
hits turn 1, you see a car, like, kind of fly and just, like, dust. And basically, in the middle of the pack, Yuki, Alex Albon, and Pierre had been three across. They were getting closer to turn 1, and Yuki and Alex ended up making contact because it was like the wall, Yuki, Alex, Pierre. And I don't really know, like, because we've talked about this before, but in the first lap, they kind of deem certain things like just race incidents. Like, they're not going to sit there and penalize certain people because there's no space, there's no room. It's
Yeah, you just
just
have
an
to get
unfortunate
into an
side
order.
effect. Like, there is a possibility of clipping people or things not being a clean race start. And so what ended up happening was Yuki and Alex clipped each other. Yuki's car like lifted and somehow spun around and was just like flew backwards into the runoff where like turn 1 it like the runoff for turn 1 is. And then Alex had like a pretty visible puncture if not further damage.
Yeah.
I don't believe Pierre suffered any damage
I don't think so.
or if there was, it didn't affect his race. But yeah, it was
Crazy.
probably like the most intense, not intense, but like the most like busy race start we've had in a really long
I know,
time.
and it's my favorite kind of race start. I love when a race starts crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everything watching it just kind of made me realize like how clean everything has been.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Um so while all of this is going on, like, and that's the thing, there's no way to kind of like highlight the first 10 minutes because it was just absolute chaos. So, with the red flags raised for the removal of the crash, it was announced that Checo is under investigation for a false start.
And it
And
was like an obvious false start too, and I felt so
well,
bad for
when
him.
I heard, I was expecting what we've kind of seen in the past where it's like that jerk, like the knee jerk reaction, but it was a little bit different this time. So basically, Checo lined up over the race box line.
We've seen it
So
before.
like where the car pulls up that line, like they can't, it's like when you stop at a red light, you can't be past the white
Yeah.
line. They can't be past the white line, and Checo was. And basically the FIA ended up handing him a 5-second penalty because of this, which, it was really, really obvious, but also it's the guy's home race. Like, give him a freaking break.
You think the FIA cares about that?
No. Um, I'm just gonna keep going until we get to that point where like it's
Yeah, keep talking. Keep
yeah,
going.
because there's so many penalties that just get hit out that are kind of important that I'll give you the details
Yes, keep
and then we'll
going. Keep
change it.
going.
Okay. On the restart, it was clear that Max was trying to get away from Carlos, and then on lap 9, the action really ramped up when Carlos lunged into turn 1 and took the lead. Honestly, I don't think anyone was really expecting an
No, it was a
aggression like
ballsy
this
lunge.
from Carlos. And Max was fighting, but eventually just like couldn't anymore. I think he was complaining a lot about his battery and issues with that. I don't know if you caught mention of it.
No, but I did catch mention of the commentator saying that he definitely is driving differently with everyone except for Like, he drives differently around Lando than he does everybody else because Lando is his championship contender and he is like he will fight Lando where people like Carlos, he was not going to waste his tires to fight Carlos.
So they feel like he's just not as aggressive with anyone else but Lando.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, it's I
Yeah,
think so too.
yeah.
So,
Um Hot on his tail after Carlos had passed him was Lando as well, who just one lap later joined in to put the pressure on Max. Like I said, Max just like couldn't stop complaining about his battery. Lando and Max's battle was nothing short of tense. Um, there was quite a lot of pushing, and I feel like it was like we were watching like two little boys fighting over like, like they were just so, and I think it would be one thing if it was consistently trying to passing, but it was the pushing off track.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to get to is it was, I think we've seen defensive driving in the likes of Max and the likes of people like Yuki and Fernando Alonso. We've seen people take risks before, but I feel like it was like a level of like, dude, come on. Like, I know you're grasping for straws.
Yeah.
So several, like, there were two specific moments that really stood out to people, two push off moments. And there was also a lot of tension around this because of what had happened last weekend. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people were really focused on Lando and Max's interactions and pushing each other off the track.
Well, Jolyon did mention that he was like, I'm not a fan of this full send into a turn, late break, just to get to the apex first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because then that's the goal. Like, it doesn't matter if you go off track. If you were at the apex first, that's all that matters then. But, like, that's not real racing in Jolyon's mind.
Well, I think it's also like you're full sending it to a degree when you're that close to another car.
Yeah.
That it's like for you to sit there and after the fact be like, well, I was at the apex for, because that's what they're always saying.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like in soccer, whenever whenever a ball goes out of the field, like every single soccer player raised their hand being like, it's ours. Like, no.
yeah. So during this battle, Charles was able to sneak past into second, which I feel like is something that is kind of becoming.
People sneak past Max and Lando as they're fighting every
Yeah,
time.
and not only Max and Lando, but like Max and whoever he's fighting at the time. Like I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people benefit from when Max is like
Because Max
battling.
only focuses on the person he's battling and forgets that there's other people around him.
Yeah. So during the battle, like I said, there was an incident, and it was officially announced that Max is being handed a 10-second penalty, which, you know, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't have like a negative or a
I do think
positive
it is a slight bit
reaction.
of a harsh penalty because most of the time when that happens, it's like a 5-second penalty.
Okay.
But I think the reason why it was so harsh is because now this is the second weekend in a row that he has done this. They didn't penalize him for it last weekend, and he thinks he can get away with it
Okay.
now.
All right. So it makes more sense. So it was like, but honestly, isn't it the FIA's fault that he didn't get affected last weekend?
Yeah, and the FIA is not consistent, so of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I don't know why this happened, but on lap 16, Fernando Alonso had to retire the car.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I feel like no one talked about it, and it was kind of sad because it was his 400th race, and there was just so much other
I
focus.
think there was probably problems with the car.
So, additionally, something that's been going viral on TikTok, a video.
Liam Lawson?
Yeah.
Liam Lawson flipped off Checo at one point while they were like fighting. And nobody knows why he did that, to be honest.
Apparently, I had seen that he said he was frustrated that he had been stuck behind him for so long and it was like a knee-jerk reaction. But I don't know.
I don't know. Liam feels different this year than he was last year.
I mean, maybe after sitting on the freaking bench
No,
for
I get it. I get it.
20-something
I get it.
races, you're hulking
No,
out.
I know.
So Checo and Liam get into it for P10, and then Checo was able to pull away, but then Liam was able to gain the seat back, and I believe this was kind of around the time that the flip off happened. Additionally, the second incident in the battle between Max and Lando that was being investigated was finally concluded, and the FIA handed Max a second 10-second penalty.
It was a great race to be a Lando fan.
Yeah, and I'm just curious to see how Max would have performed without the 20-second penalties because he was struggling, like in the beginning.
Yeah, but he still did well.
Yeah, he still did well. Carlos ended up performing incredibly, and at this point, when Max was handed his second 10-second penalty, Carlos was in the lead by around 3 seconds. Um, Oscar had also been moving up the field because he started in, I think, like P17 or P16. And he was already at P11 at this point. So you were seeing like quite a decent amount of movement up and
Yeah.
down, which I think really made it like interesting.
I'm a little nervous for Oscar, but we'll get into that in the final thoughts.
On lap 27, Max went into the pits and served his 20-second penalty, which is what we all saw and panicked about, and
I thought when
resulted.
we had seen it yesterday or on Sunday,
I thought he had like mechanic issues.
I thought that Red Bull had just fucked up.
I thought
I
that
thought
there
that it was like the
was-
worst fuck up ever. That like the drill, whatever, the bolt gun or whatever, the tire gun, like had just broken on the car. I had
Oh,
no idea.
Well, and that was
Or maybe he hit someone.
that was the confusing thing too, is seeing that he did finish the race and then seeing that he did take a 24-second pit stop, and my mind didn't even think to go to penalties.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
Yeah,
It makes more sense now.
it does. Context. Sorry, I'm just
Like
trying
her brain
to.
just stopped for a second.
I'm just trying to find like the important things because there's a whole bunch of like Lando pitted and came out P4.
Yeah, that doesn't
Lewis
matter
was
at the end of the
moving
day.
past both Lawson and Piastri at this point to be behind his teammate in
Okay.
P5.
Okay.
I think at this point that was the other thing too, is I think about halfway through the race it kind of settled.
Yeah, the only times then at that point that people were moving were just like post pit stop, trying to work your way back up the field, stuff like that.
I think one thing to note was that there was quite a bit of battling between Mercedes, and at one point they were
Both
given
Mercedes drivers.
Yeah. Between George
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Lewis.
yeah.
And at one point they were told by their team that they were okay to race. Um Oscar continued to move up the grid, which was an improvement. And then Lando kept eating away at the gap between him and Charles, especially since they had begun to lap the drivers. So he was able to really use that DRS advantage. On lap 62, this, I think, made every Ferrari fan clench. On lap 62, with the gap only about half a second, Charles hit the final corner
Locked up.
wide, almost hitting the barriers but catching himself, and this opened the door for Lando to take second. And this is
Lando was getting
very
Lando had closed up the gap so much that he likely would have. Well, who knows? Because Lando has a hard time passing people.
Well, I think he would have eventually passed, but I do want to make mention of the fact that a lot of people are really impressed with the fact that Charles did not hit the barrier.
Oh yeah,
Because the section that he went off the track was so dirty.
yeah.
There was no grip whatsoever, and people were just impressed with the fact that like he didn't
He kept
hit
it on track.
Yeah. On lap 66, after what felt like eons, Lewis was finally able to pass George. And then I don't really remember this, but apparently there was a little scrap between Franco and Liam, which caused Liam to pit after
Yeah.
gaining damage. I
Yeah.
might have fallen asleep.
No, I watched that part. Yeah, that did happen.
So that happened, and then Checo attempted.
It was similar to Liam, like trying to get past Checo. This was
Okay.
Franco trying to get past Liam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Checo attempted to gain the fastest lap towards the end because at this point, and this is something I probably should have explained more. Checo had like a decent amount of damage done to his side pod. Like there was
Yeah.
like a hole in his in the side pod. And so at the end, I think just
Both Charles, Checo, and like somebody else all pitted for softs to try and get the fastest lap. And the reason why
I think
Even though
Liam
Checo was in
Lawson.
like 17th, the reason why they pitted him to go try to get fastest lap was because then Ferrari wouldn't get it, and right now Ferrari is either ahead or just about to pass Red Bull in the constructors championship.
Ferrari's really, really close, like very close to passing Red Bull. So yeah, I think it was Checo, Liam Lawson, and Charles all went out, but Charles ended up being the successful victor for the fastest lap. Um, Overall, Carlos Sainz ended up winning the race, which I think was there's a
I was
lot.
excited about it. He needed it. I
And
didn't like the lack of Ferrari representation when he got out of the car, but
there was a lot of his family was there. I think his
yes.
mom and his
It was the first
dad.
time his mom got to see him on the
Yeah,
podium.
I think it was the first time his mom had seen that. I think that there was like a lot more celebrating and celebration. Like, I don't know if you saw Zach Brown and then Carlos jump into the McLaren and the Red Bull photos.
Yeah.
Like, I think that I it's so so many people are so not heartbroken because he's going to Williams and he'll be fine. But it's one of those moments where it's like he's an incredible driver that it's just happenstance.
Yeah. It just kind of sucked that 7-time world champion Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton wanted to leave
Wanted
Mercedes.
to come
Because
to Ferrari.
if he didn't want to leave Mercedes, I don't think that he would be leaving Ferrari.
Yeah. Up on the podium with Carlos was Lando and Charles, and a lot of people kind of online were alluding to the fact of like this was a magical podium because it was like maybe possibly Carlos's last Ferrari win with like two of his favorite teammates
Yeah.
on the podium. So I think it was just like one of those like special moments that the fans, obviously are like the stars aligned for this
Yeah.
moment to happen. Following up in fourth place is Lewis Hamilton. Fifth place is George Russell. Oh my god, I was about to say Russellton. Sixth place was Max Verstappen. 7 was K-Mag. 8 was Oscar Piastri. 9 was Nico Hulkenberg. 10 was Pierre. 11 was Lance. 12 was Franco Colapinto, who additionally was handed a 10-second penalty post-race because of an incident between him and Liam when they were racing. I'm not honestly exactly sure what happened.
He hit the front wing of Liam trying to get on the inside of him in the turn.
You're right. Yeah. Esteban Ocon came in 13th. 14th was Valtteri. 15th was Zhou. 16th was Liam. 17th was Checo. And then 18th, 19th, and 20th doesn't really count because they all DNF'd. Fernando Alonso, Alex Albon, and Yuki Tsunoda.
Okay. We are going to talk about some things in our final thoughts. While we were talking about the race, it was either the race or quali. I said that I am nervous about Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, why?
I don't know if it's because Lando has typically been performing quite, like, very, very well, but I just don't know if McLaren, like, because he's not performing exactly as well as Lando. Like, there's been, like, several races now where he has made it to Q3 and he qualifies in the top 10, but, like, he, like, fucks up one of it and ends up, like P9 or, like, P7. Meanwhile, Lando is getting pole.
Yeah, I mean, I also, to kind of play devil's advocate, I look at experience.
Yeah.
I think we have to look at experience and think of, where was Lando in his second season.
It's hard to say that, though, when they didn't have the car
when they didn't
have
have the car.
now.
All right, I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on, but also, you know, I don't know. I'm not overly worried. I think that they really work well together, at least from the
I
outside
agree.
looking in. But yeah, it would be interesting to keep an eye on his qualifying performance.
Yeah.
and, see, because it feels like every race is a fight for him to just climb up to higher points.
And when the constructors championship is so close, like this is why people thought that like Checo was going to lose his seat because he's not performing as well as Max and like they need the points to stay in first for constructors.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder too if like statistically, like because like if there's like a certain window of like because I feel like Oscar's still within points almost every weekend.
He always gets points every
Yeah.
weekend or is close to points every weekend, but not as I don't I fear that they're going to say that he's not maximizing the points.
Yeah. I hate falling on the excuse. I really do wonder if it's experience.
Yeah, potentially.
But
What else do you have thoughts on? There was something else I was thinking about.
honestly, I feel like the closer we get to the end of the season, the like zanier people are gonna get with their conspiracies.
How so?
I feel like all of the battles, all the drama, all the friendship, like we're just like everything just seems like you can tell we're getting to the end of the season.
Yeah, last season and this season, you can tell when we're getting close to the end of the season because people are scrappy
Yeah.
and they're annoyed.
Yeah. Which like if you've been on the road for like
Months.
yeah, literally, the last 10 months, I think I would be
I would get it.
scrappy and annoyed, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting. I think you can see a lot of the drivers. There's a bit of like I feel like friction on the grid.
100%.
I feel like it's really, really interesting seeing some of the younger drivers starting to clash with some of the older drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me not chuckle because I don't know if that's a proper response, but a little like hee hee about the beginning of next season because there's gonna be new faces and it's gonna be a learning curve and some
Yeah.
of the older guys like I feel like there really haven't been like a three there haven't
Well, because you don't
been
know how the new faces race.
yeah. So I think it's me interesting, but I feel like the scrappiness is out in full
I kind
force.
of enjoy the scrappiness though.
Yeah. Um I am intrigued to see and I do feel like Ferrari is going to pass Red Bull in the Constructors
Oh,
Cup.
100%.
Um
I don't think Ferrari's going to pass McLaren. I think McLaren has enough performance in their car that they'll be able to stay ahead. It'll be just ahead though.
I don't know about the drivers championship. The gap
I
is
really don't
still
know,
really big.
but there's enough time.
Yeah, I don't
Like
know.
I think it could come down to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting and
If I see another edit, if I see edits of the 2024 Abu Dhabi race uh, at the end of this year and people are editing it to freaking Skyfall by Adele like they have with all of the Lewis Max stuff in 2021, I will scream. I can't do it anymore. The drama is ridiculous.
well, I wonder too if it's gonna get like dramatic with all the penalties. Because I do feel like that
Penalties will mean a lot.
I do feel like the FIA is stirring the pot a little bit.
Of course they are.
And I'm just curious because apparently, Red Bull was not happy with those 20 seconds, obviously. And
I'm not surprised.
I wonder how much the penalties are going to not only piss off the drivers, but also us as spectators. Because sometimes I feel like they do become like nonsensical.
Oh yeah.
So,
Like last year with the track limits at Qatar, I think it was. It was like, come on.
yeah.
Like, please.
I'm excited for Brazil. I think that there is so like this triple header section of the schedule. Like
It's fun.
it's fun. Don't move it, FIA. Like don't keep it a triple. Like in my opinion, as someone who's not traveling with a team, I feel like it's great. It's three great races. Three really loud, proud, exciting races.
The one thing that I do want to mention, which is me stirring the pot. It's funny, but it's not funny. A comment was made to Carlos after the race, after he won. Remember, everyone, Carlos is a Spaniard, and he was called the King of Mexico
I thought I
afterwards.
heard of this. Yeah.
And like, it's not funny. It's not funny.
Who called him
I
that?
don't
A
remember who it was. I
journalist?
think it was a journalist. Like, it was obviously not like intended in like a like Spaniard colonialism kind of way. We can also say this because we are Spanish, so I'm not like it is still just like, oh my goodness. Like the one person to not say that to. Like,
Yeah, like maybe if Checo won,
yeah, to call a
but
Spaniard the king of
like if
Mexico is not okay.
like if Charles won Monza, do they call him the king of Italy? Like they don't.
It might be a little different because it's not like Monaco took over many countries.
No, I know. I'm just saying like that's such a weird thing to call someone after winning the race.
Yeah, I don't know if he was uncomfortable. I don't think anybody realized it in the moment, to be
But
honest,
it's
and
just
then
the
people
internet
saw it
now
afterwards and
afterwards, or
everyone is
like,
like, "Oh, yeah, no, that wasn't the greatest thing to say, to be
yeah,
honest."
like maybe let's not call him.
Well, I feel like it's almost similar to how, have you seen, this is completely off topic, but have you seen the clip of the Graham Norton show with Paul Mescal, Saoirse
I
Ronan,
have
where they're
where they're
talking about like
who
self-defense
even.
using your phone, and Paul Mescal was like, "Yeah, if somebody's coming up to attack me, I'm totally gonna pull out my phone. Who thinks about that stuff?" And they're all like laughing, and then it finally quiets down, and Saoirse Ronan goes, "Well, women have to think about that stuff all the
Mhm.
time, don't we, ladies?" And like the whole audience starts cheering her on, and it was just like, they were silenced because they sounded stupid. Like,
Yeah, yeah. That's weird. That's
yeah,
not.
it
No,
was
just like
weird.
I'm laughing at it because again it wasn't meant hopefully in a malicious way, but
No, it's just
it's
you
just
live in a
like,
different reality and not thinking about how
well,
that language could affect
it's also
others.
just that's not something that, why would you call him that? Whatever.
Yeah.
But
Anyways,
yeah.
moving on from that, just thought it was funny to mention. Um, very excited for Brazil next weekend.
Mhm.
The race is on my birthday, so hope we're gonna have some birthday luck for it. My only wish.
Are we doing
I
something
can't
for
wish
it?
my birthday. I can't give you guys. I can't tell you my wish, or else it's not gonna come true.
Are people coming
Um,
over? Or are we just.
well, we're at a Halloween party the night before, so if I am
Oh.
okay enough to function to see people potentially, who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll go watch it in person with other Nashville people. We've been saying that we're gonna do this forever, and
I
we
don't
just haven't
know.
done it.
I don't know if we're gonna do it race after a Halloween party.
Yeah, but like every other race is at like 7 a.m. for us.
We'll figure it out.
Anyways, that's it for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, do all the things.
Yeah.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.